Welcome back, dear friends. The plan of the lecture today is what is written on the board. I would be discussing the reverse Carnot cycle, which is an ideal most cycle which one can think of. And then we would go into discussing why this reverse Carnot cycle is not adopted as a ideal cycle for refrigeration systems. That means we would be discussing the limitations of reverse Carnot cycle, and then we would be formulating the ideal cycle for refrigeration system, which is called as simple vapor compression cycle. So this is the plan. In the reverse Carnot cycle discussion, I will be taking both the discussion on reverse Carnot gas cycle as well as reverse Carnot vapor cycle. We all know that refrigeration is a phenomena of maintaining the temperature below the ambient. So if I want to represent the block diagram of a refrigeration system, it would look like this. So have a look at this block diagram wherein I am representing a refrigeration system. So this, let us say, is a high temperature reservoir. Let me represent it by TH. And this, let us say, is a lower temperature reservoir. Let me represent it by TL. What the refrigeration system does, and when I'm saying refrigeration system, it would include even an air conditioning system. So when I'm using the generic term refrigeration system, what I mean is any system which maintains the temperature below the ambient. So it could be a household refrigerator which maintains minus temperatures. It could be cold storages which maintains negative temperatures for food preservation. It could be ice plant where the negative temperatures are maintained for ice formation in the ice factory, or it could be air conditioning system where we are maintaining temperature lower than the surrounding temperature for comfort or industrial applications. So any system which maintains the temperature below the ambient is, we all understand, is a refrigeration system. So such a system schematic is shown over here, where this machine operating on a thermodynamic cycle would pump the heat from a lower temperature reservoir, let us say, which is at a temperature TL, to a higher temperature reservoir, which is, let us say, at a temperature TH. And let us say the corresponding heat which is pumped or removed from the space to be cooled is QL, and the heat which is rejected to a higher temperature reservoir is QH. And we know that from the second law of thermodynamics that this process cannot happen spontaneously. So for this process to happen, we need to supply certain external work. So some external work has to be supplied, which has to be greater than zero for this phenomenon to happen. So this is a schematic of any refrigeration system. And we all know that the coefficient of performance, which is the parameter for judging the performance of a refrigeration system, is the ratio of the refrigerating effect, which is QL, upon the work input, which is W. So QL is what is the refrigerating capacity or refrigerating effect of a machine, and the work, when you are talking about the mechanical refrigeration systems, the work is in the form of compressor work. So the refrigerating effect upon compressor work would give us the performance in the form of coefficient of performance, COP. So the ideal representation of this would be in the form of a reverse Carnot heat engine, reverse Carnot engine. So Carnot heat engine we are all familiar with. If I represent the Carnot heat engine, again by a block diagram. And if I talk about the reverse Carnot engine, reverse Carnot cycle, which is simply the reversing of the Carnot cycle. So the reverse Carnot cycle would be anti-clockwise and the Carnot cycle would be clockwise. So Carnot heat engine, we know that the Carnot cycle comprises of 4 processes, of which 2 are isothermal and 2 are isentropic. So if I want to represent the Carnot cycle on a temperature entropy diagram, it looks somewhat like this. Let us say this vertical axis represents the temperature and the horizontal axis represents the entropy. So the temperature entropy diagram for a Carnot cycle would be a rectangle. So temperature entropy would be a rectangle wherein 2 processes would be isothermal and 2 processes would be isentropic. So this representation of a Carnot heat engine, is Carnot cycle, would appear somewhat like this, wherein there is a heat addition. Let us say this is some process A to B is heat addition, and when the heat is added in the Carnot engine, the temperature remains constant. It is a reversible isothermal heat addition. Temperature remains constant, the entropy would increase. B to C is a reversible adiabatic process where the entropy remains constant, and hence it is a vertical line on a temperature entropy diagram. And the process C to D, which is a reversible isothermal heat rejection to the sink, and D to A is isentropic compression. So this is, we are all familiar, this is a Carnot cycle and this is a clockwise cycle on a temperature entropy representation. So if you reverse this cycle, that is, if you make it anti-clockwise, then it would appear somewhat like this. So let me reverse this and make it anti-clockwise. So the representation again would be some rectangle, but the direction would be different. Okay, so then again we would have two isothermals and two reversible adiabatics, which are nothing but isentropics. So this is the reverse Carnot gas cycle, because I'm dealing with the single phase, which is a gaseous phase. This is a gas cycle, and let me call this as some point 1, this is point 2, this is state 3, and this is state 4. Look at this, I have drawn it as a anti-clockwise cycle. So this cycle, if I want to now represent in terms of processes, okay, this 1 to 2 is a process. Again, this is a temperature entropy diagram. This is temperature on the vertical and entropy on the horizontal. So 1 to 2 is a process which is reversible adiabatic, that is isentropic. 2 to 3 is a process which is reversible isothermal. The temperature remains constant and there is a heat rejection, and hence the entropy would decrease. 3 to 4 is a reversible adiabatic expansion. Because it is an expansion, the temperature would drop down and the entropy would remain constant. And in the process 4 to 1, it is the process of heat addition, which is leading to increase in the entropy, but the temperature remains constant. So if you want to list down these processes, let me use another screen for this. The reverse Carnot cycle, the processes would be as follows. So the reverse Carnot cycle, there would be two heat addition there would be one heat addition process, one heat rejection process, there would be one compression process, and there would be one expansion process. Two of these processes would be isothermals, reversible isothermal, and two of them would be reversible adiabatic. So the representation which I had done on the temperature entropy diagram, look at this, I would be using the same notations. So if you look at this, so process 1 to 2 is a reversible adiabatic process. So process 1 to 2, let me draw this. 1 to 2 is a reversible adiabatic process of compression of compression. And because the process is reversible and because it is also adiabatic, meaning the heat transfer is zero, this happens to be a isentropic compression process. Isentropic compression process. The next process which I had drawn on a temperature entropy diagram, you see that it is an isothermal process, but it is not simply an isothermal process. It is a reversible isothermal process. And this reversible isothermal process, you see, is associated with the decrease in entropy, and the decrease in entropy has to do with the heat rejection. So this is a reversible isothermal heat rejection phenomena, which leads to decrease in entropy. The temperature remains constant. The process 3 to 4, which I had drawn, if you look at this process, let me show you the process again, the temperature entropy diagram for this. So you see that the process 3 to 4 is a vertical on a temperature entropy, meaning that the entropy remains constant and the temperature drops down. So the temperature drops down because the internal energy would decrease, and that has to do with the expansion phenomenon. So 3 to 4, the temperature drops down, the entropy remains constant. It is because of expansion. So it is an isentropic expansion, reversible adiabatic expansion. So it is a reversible adiabatic expansion phenomena, or in other words, it is an isentropic expansion. It is an isentropic expansion. And the process of 4 to 1, if you look at the temperature entropy diagram again, you would find that the entropy is increasing from 4 to 1, and this entropy has increased because of the heat addition process. So the heat is being added, as a result of which the entropy would increase, but the temperature remains constant. The process is isothermal. It is not simply isothermal, it is reversible isothermal. So it is a reversible isothermal heat addition. Now we need to keep in mind that this process of 4 to 1, when you are saying that there is a heat addition, it is basically the heat addition to the working fluid, and this is basically the process where the heat is rejected from the space to be cooled. So this is a process wherein we are going to get the cooling effect or the refrigerating effect. So the process 4 to 1 is going to yield us the refrigerating effect, and the process of compression is the process wherein the work is input, there is a work input, and the process of expansion is the process where there is the work output expansion. So if you want to represent the performance of this, so the coefficient of performance of this would be the refrigerating effect, which is QL, upon the net input, which is the compressor input minus the expansion input. So this would be the coefficient of performance of a reverse Carnot cycle. Or in terms of energy balance, if you look at this energy balance, so it would be QL upon QH minus QL, QL upon QH minus QL. Now, in order to obtain this expression of QL and QH, what you do is that we'll look at the temperature entropy diagram again for a reverse Carnot cycle. So the process of QH, that is the heat rejection, happens during the process 2 to 3 in my diagram. So the area under QH is the heat rejected, and it is the area under 2 to 3, and area under 2 to 3 is the heat rejected, because that is the significance of temperature entropy diagram. So it would be TH into the delta S, the entropy change during the process 2 to 3. So the heat rejected is the area under 2 to 3, and it is equal to TH, which is T2 equal to T3, which is the temperature of the higher temperature reservoir, into the change in entropy. Similarly, when you are talking about the heat rejection, it happens during the process 4 to 1, which is an isothermal process, and that 4 to 1 is the temperature T4 is equal to T1 is equal to TL. So heat rejection on a temperature entropy diagram is the area under 4 to 1, which is equal to TL into delta S 4 to 1. Now, if you look at this diagram carefully, that is this rectangle, you will find that, let me complete this rectangle. So you'll find that the area, the length 2 to 3 is equal to length 4 to 1. That is delta S 2 to 3 is equal to, it's a rectangle, right? Opposite sides are equal. So entropy change during the process 2 to 3 is equal to entropy change during the process 4 to 1. So if you look at this, then what happens is, to the expression of COP, coefficient of performance, would be QLS TL delta S 4 to 1 upon QHS TH into delta S 2 to 3 minus TL into delta S 4 to 1. And because these entropies are equal, this entropy terms would cancel out, and what you will be left with the neat expression for the Carnot cycle coefficient of performance, which is TL upon TH minus TL upon TH minus TL. So this gives us the expression for the Carnot cycle coefficient of performance. The Carnot cycle coefficient of performance is a function of the higher temperature reservoir and a lower temperature reservoir. So if you want to find the coefficient of performance COP of a reverse Carnot cycle, then what information is needed? The required information is that we don't require the properties of the refrigerant. What we require is the temperature of the higher temperature reservoir and the temperature of the lower temperature reservoir, and the expression is TL upon TH minus TL. So let us solve one small numerical which helps us to calculate the coefficient of performance of a reverse Carnot cycle. So let us say that we want to find the ideal coefficient of performance of a machine, a refrigerating machine, whose temperature is, let us take down this numerical, that let us calculate the ideal or the maximum coefficient of performance of a refrigerator, let us say refrigerator which maintains a temperature of let us say minus 10 degrees centigrade in the evaporator in the refrigerator section, and the ambient temperature is let us say 23 degrees centigrade. Okay, 23 degrees centigrade. So if you want to calculate the maximum possible coefficient of performance of this machine, what you would get is very simple expression now. So TL would be minus 10 plus 273 Kelvin, and TH would be 23 plus 273 Kelvin. So your coefficient of performance becomes 263 upon 23 minus of minus 10. So this becomes 263 upon 24, 33. Okay, this way you can calculate. So what it means is that the coefficient of performance is a function of TL and TH. Now, supposing that we wanted to calculate the coefficient of performance of a air conditioning system, which maintains a temperature of, let us say, instead of -10, let us say the air conditioning system maintains a temperature of 5 degrees centigrade. Okay, so what you'd get is, if you substitute this instead of -10 in the expression, if you substitute 5 degrees centigrade, you will find that the coefficient of performance would improve. Okay, so this gives us one insight, a very important insight. Though reverse Carnot cycle cannot be constructed, and we will be discussing why it cannot be constructed, but what the analysis, reverse Carnot cycle analysis, gives us is an information that if you want to achieve a lower temperature, if you want to maintain a lower temperature, that is, if your TL is lower, then the coefficient of performance would be lower. If you maintain a higher TL, okay, it all depends on the application. For example, in AC system, you require a higher TL, then the coefficient of performance of a AC machine would be greater than the coefficient of performance of a refrigerating system. Okay, so these insights we get when we discuss the reverse Carnot cycle. Okay, now in spite of these insights that uh, the reverse Carnot cycle is an ideal cycle and it is having the best possible coefficient of performance, okay, we cannot construct a reverse Carnot cycle. We cannot actually build a machine which will operate on a reverse Carnot cycle. So before that, let me just touch upon what is a reverse Carnot cycle for a vapor as a refrigerant. Okay, so let me discuss a vapor reverse Carnot cycle. So the processes would remain the same. Vapor reverse Carnot cycle, the processes would remain the same. Which are those processes? There would be two isothermals and there would be two isentropics. The only difference is that we would be constructing this cycle using a vapor dome. You are aware of what is a vapor dome. Suppose this is a temperature entropy diagram, which I am drawing again, but now I won't be drawing it on a blank sheet. I would be using a vapor dome as a background for constructing the reverse Carnot cycle. Okay, so this becomes the reverse Carnot cycle. So there are two isentropics. Okay, so one, let us say this is 1, this is 2. So 1 to 2 is isentropic compression, followed by let us say this is 2 to 3, reversible isothermal heat rejection, followed by isentropic expansion, and then a reversible isothermal heat addition. Okay, so this becomes a representation of a reverse Carnot cycle on the vapor dome. Okay, now the problem with this is that if you want to discuss why this cycle cannot be adopted as an ideal cycle for your practical refrigeration systems, we need to concentrate on the processes. So 1 to 2, what is the 1 to 2 process? 1 to 2 is the isentropic compression. Now isentropic compression, if you look at the diagram carefully, the isentropic compression here is a wet compression. And wet compression is many times not at all desirable and not at all feasible, because if the refrigerant is wet, especially for most of the refrigerant, if the refrigerant is wet at the inlet, then that would create issues with the compressor operation. Okay, so refrigerant should be dry most of the time, or it should be superheated. That is the requirement in most of the cases. Of why most, that we'll discuss later. Okay, so refrigerant should be dry at the inlet of the compressor. So this is one of the limitation, that if you construct a vapor reverse Carnot cycle, then 1 to 2 is an isentropic compression, which is a wet compression. Similarly, the process 3 to 4, if you consider the process 3 to 4, you will find that this is an isentropic expansion. And what it means is, if I want to construct a process 3 to 4, if I want to practically execute a process 3 to 4, the point 4, okay, has to be at a particular dryness fraction. Okay, so that means we need to control. It is very difficult to control the state 4. So you need to control the state 4 if the process has to be isentropic. So you need to control the state 4, and then we can carry out the process 4 to 1. So this again becomes a difficult task, that you need to expand it in such a manner that we arrive at a state 4, okay, and not anywhere else. One more problem is, when we are talking about the process 4 to 1, because we are talking about the process 4 to 1, we are leaving this line untapped. Okay, so this starts from the wet region and ends in the wet region. So your latent heat is not completely utilized, and hence your capacity is less for the given mass of refrigerant. Okay, one can think of a reverse Carnot cycle in a different way. Okay, you would say that instead of having a wet compression, why not have a dry compression? Okay, and instead of having this process 3 to 4 ending in the wet region, why not end it on the saturated curve? Okay, so let us look at this kind of cycle. So I would be drawing this cycle now. So let us talk about this cycle, a new reverse Carnot cycle. I am showing it by a dotted line, wherein let us say that this is a process. Let me just okay, this I want to draw it as a dry compression. Just erasing this. Okay, so 1 to 2 was wet compression. I would be replacing it with now a dry compression. Okay, so for a dry compression to happen, this one would be now 1 dash on a vapor dome. Okay, and this 2 dash would be on a vertical drawn from 1 dash. So this becomes 2 dash. Similarly, if I want to have this 4 end up on a vaporing dome, so what I need to do is that again I need to construct a isentropic process and a vertical process. Okay, so this 3 dash 4 dash is a vertical, okay, and 1 dash 2 dash is a vertical. Okay, so this would take care of these two limitations. That is, now we won't be having a wet compression, and hence there won't be any problem with the compressor operation. The lubricating oil will not wash off. Okay, and we won't be having issues with the maintenance issues of the compressor. Similarly, controlling the state 4 issue would also be solved, because now we would be replacing it with expansion which ends at state 4 dash. However, the problem now begins in achieving the process 2 dash 2 and 3 dash. If you look at the process 2 dash 2 dash 2 is an isothermal process beyond the vapor dome. Similarly, 3 dash is an isothermal process beyond the vapor dome. See, if you want to achieve a process of 2 to 3 isothermally, it is pretty easy, because what is the process 2 to 3? The process 2 to 3 is a condensation process, right? So condensation process, we know that it is a phase change process, and during the heat rejection, one can have a phase change easily at a constant temperature, right, and a constant pressure. However, if you want to achieve the process 2 dash 2, it is a sensible process. Okay, if you want to achieve it at constant pressure, and if you want to achieve it as a constant temperature process, then what we need to do is that we need to keep on changing the pressure, right? So process 2 to 2 dash or 2 dash to 2 can be achieved only if the pressure changes infinitesimally times. Okay, many times. So for the process 3 to 3 dash to happen, and for the process 2 dash to 2 to happen, we need to keep on varying the pressure continuously. So constructing a heat exchanger where the pressure is continuously varying, nobody has yet done it. Okay, if you can do it, it's good. But what heat exchangers which we have in the market today, and what is possible, realistic design of the heat exchangers is possible, is the constant pressure, near constant pressure heat exchanger, wherein we can achieve the heat rejection process at a constant pressure. So constructing a varying pressure heat exchanger, if you want to achieve 2 dash to 2 and 3 to 3 dash, becomes a mammoth task, okay, a very difficult task, right? Hence that puts a limitation on the process 2 dash to 2 and 3 to 3 dash. So these are the limitations of the reverse Carnot cycle. Okay, achieving the process 2 dash to 2 and 3 to 3 dash is not possible. Okay, and then we need to think of some other cycle. One more issue we need to discuss is your 3 dash to 4 dash or even 3 to 4 process is an expansion process, and one might think that this process 3 to 4 or 3 dash to 4 dash is going to yield us positive work. Okay, but that is misleading in the sense that the process 3 to 4, as you see, though it is an expansion work, it is an expansion work, and its work, you know, can be calculated as a positive work is calculated as V into delta P, because it is an open system. So V is V3, or if it is 3 dash, it is V3 dash, and delta P is the condenser pressure minus the evaporator pressure. Mind well that the process 2 to 3 is a condensation and process 4 to 1 is evaporation. Okay, so condenser pressure minus the evaporator pressure into V3 is the work of positive work of expansion. So one might think that we would get a positive work and hence the work input would be less. But that is not the case, because what we are expanding is the fluid, and you know that the specific volume of the fluid is much less than the specific volume Vg. Okay, so what you consume here, here we are compressing a gas or almost a gas at 1 or 1 dash, right? And hence the work of compression is significantly higher, because that would also be V into delta P, right? But what we gain in terms of expansion is pretty less, because what you are expanding is a liquid and not a gas, right? So the gain which you see apparently, and we would be tempted to use an expander instead of a throttling device, that is in the real life not a positive work, because in the real life you would have, even if you construct a expander or some turbine where you allow the liquid to expand, the gain which you would be getting is negligibly small, because it is the Vf into delta P, and that gain, theoretical gain, which you calculate as Vf into delta P, would also be lost, because that machine would have certain friction. So the friction would consume that V into delta P, and what would be left is we would be having a zero work or even a negative work, right? So that is the reason why we need to remove this process of expansion and think of something else. Now, what is that something else we think of? If you change these processes to overcome the limitations of the reverse Carnot cycle, we end up with what is known as a vapor compression refrigeration cycle. So vapor compression refrigeration cycle is an ideal cycle which takes care of the limitation of the reverse Carnot cycle, and this is a thermodynamic cycle used for analysis of refrigeration systems which use the compressor. Okay, so what is this cycle? So we would be replacing certain processes of the reverse Carnot cycle. So 1 to 2 would remain reversible adiabatic compression similar to your reverse Carnot cycle, but it would be a dry compression, or it would be a compression handling a superheated vapor. So the process remains the same. It would be a reversible adiabatic compression in vapor compression cycle, or because it is reversible adiabatic, it is an isentropic compression. The process which changes, okay, as compared to the reverse Carnot cycle is a process 2 to 3. Process 2 to 3, in the reverse Carnot cycle, we talked about a reversible isothermal heat rejection process. Instead of that, here we are attempting a constant pressure heat rejection. Okay, we are not talking about the isothermal process. Here we are aiming for, and I told you that that has to do with the design of heat exchanger. So constant pressure heat rejection is the new process which replaces the isothermal heat rejection process in the Carnot cycle. So this is new process, constant pressure heat rejection. Similarly, we talked about an isentropic expansion in a reverse Carnot cycle, but here in the vapor compression cycle, we would be replacing that isentropic expansion with what is called as a throttling process or isenthalpic expansion. Isenthalpic expansion. So now we no longer would require a turbine, okay, and we won't be getting any work because the enthalpy remains constant, and we are using a throttling device, and a throttling device is not a work producing device, okay, but it is a very compact device, okay, and that adds to the convenience of design, that saves space, okay, and that is what is desirable, okay. So instead of using a reversible process of isentropic expansion, we are substituting it with the irreversible process of isenthalpic expansion or throttling, okay. And finally, the process of heat rejection, which was a process at a isothermal conditions, a reversible isothermal condition, that again we replace it. Instead of isothermal heat addition process, now we have a new process which is a constant pressure heat addition. Constant pressure heat addition. Okay, so the cycle looks like this now. We have three processes replaced. The original reverse Carnot cycle had four processes: reversible adiabatic compression, isothermal heat rejection, reversible adiabatic expansion, and reversible isothermal heat addition. That three, the last three, we are replaced it with constant pressure heat rejection, isenthalpic expansion, and constant pressure heat addition. So if you think of this cycle, then this cycle is now not a reverse Carnot cycle, it is a new thermodynamic cycle, and that cycle is called as vapor compression refrigeration cycle. Vapor compression refrigeration cycle. So let us represent this vapor compression refrigeration cycle on a temperature entropy diagram. Okay. So let us do this. Again, we will be choosing a vertical for a temperature, and we will be choosing a horizontal for entropy, and then this is a vapor dome, right? And we think of two constant pressure processes. So this is a constant pressure line which would represent the condenser pressure line. This is a condenser pressure line, high pressure line, condenser pressure line, and there is another pressure line which is the low pressure line, which is the evaporator pressure line. So we said that the heat addition and heat rejection happens at constant pressure, and that is the reason why we are drawing a constant pressure line. So the lower pressure line is the evaporator pressure line. So this is evaporator pressure line. This is evaporator pressure line. This is evaporator pressure line. The higher pressure line is a condenser pressure line. So this is a condenser pressure line, condenser pressure line, condenser pressure line. We are talking about dry compression. So I would start with the state on the dry saturated vapor curve. So this is the state 1, and I need to draw a vertical because the process 1 to 2 is a isentropic compression. So 1 to 2 is an isentropic compression. So I draw a vertical, okay, meaning that the entropy at 1 and 2 is constant. The next process in a vapor compression cycle is a constant pressure heat rejection. So let us say that this is going to give me a saturated liquid at the end of heat rejection, and let us say this is your state 3. And so 2 to 3 is a constant pressure heat rejection, And 3 to 4 is, as I said, it is not a isentropic process. So it won't be a vertical, it would be a isenthalpic process. So, and it is an irreversible process. And so, because it is an irreversible process, there would be a slight increase in the entropy. So it would be, and because it is irreversible, so I'm showing it the dotted line. You see that the entropy at 4 is slightly more than entropy at 3. This has to do with the phenomena being irreversible, the phenomena of increase in entropy, and the enthalpy at 3 and 4 would be the same. Enthalpy at 3 and 4 would be the same. So the process 2 to 3 is this, which is a constant pressure heat rejection followed by a decrease in the entropy from 2 to 3, and 3 to 4 is an isenthalpic process followed by a slight increase in the entropy, and 4 to 1 is a constant pressure heat addition. And because there is heat addition, you are going to get a refrigerating effect in the process 4 to 1, and that would be associated with the increase in entropy. So this is a representation of the vapor compression refrigeration cycle on a temperature entropy diagram. So how would this look on a pressure enthalpy diagram? So on a pressure enthalpy diagram, let me figure it out how this looks. So pressure enthalpy diagram, let me draw the simple vapor compression refrigeration cycle. On the vertical, I would be using the pressure, and on the horizontal, I would be using the term enthalpy. And let us say this is a vapor dome. This is a vapor dome. The constant pressure lines, let me draw first. This is the low pressure line, which is the evaporator pressure line. And this is a high pressure line, which is a condenser pressure line. There is a compression from a low pressure to a high pressure. Let me start with the point 1, which is on the saturated vapor dome. There is a process of compression which happens at a constant entropy. So I need to trace a constant entropy line from 1 up to the condenser pressure. So let us say this is a constant entropy line. Let us say this is a constant entropy line. S is equal to constant. And let us say your point 2 is over here. This is a point 2. Okay, let me erase the extension here. I'm erasing the extension. Okay, and now you know that this is a constant entropy line. Now 2 to 3 is a horizontal because it is a constant pressure line and we are drawing a pressure enthalpy diagram. So 2 to 3 is a horizontal, and this pressure, that is P2, will be equal to P3, and this would represent the condenser pressure. Okay, and we need to draw, so this is 1 to 2 is isentropic compression. The entropy remains constant. The pressure increases because it is a compression from P1 to P2. That is from the evaporator pressure up to the condenser pressure. Then during the heat rejection, the pressure remains constant, which is equal to the condenser pressure, P2 to P3. And then finally, there is an expansion in the throttling device, and this is an isenthalpic process. Okay, this is an isenthalpic process. So it is a vertical. So this process is a vertical process on a pressure enthalpy diagram, meaning that the enthalpy before throttling H3 is equal to enthalpy after throttling H4. Okay, this is the process 3 to 4. And the expansion is from the condenser pressure to the evaporator pressure. Okay, and 4 to 1, again the pressure remains constant. The pressure P4 is equal to pressure P1 will equal to the evaporator pressure, So this becomes the representation of the simple vapor compression refrigeration cycle on a pressure enthalpy diagram. So this is a very useful diagram. You would find that in the market you would get pressure enthalpy charts. We can easily plot the simple vapor compression cycle on the pressure enthalpy chart, and we can get the corresponding values of the enthalpies at the state 1, 2, 3, and 4. For example, we can read the value of H1, H2, H3, and H4. And then by knowing this enthalpies, it is very easy to estimate the performance of the refrigeration cycle. And how is that easy? Because the coefficient of performance, after applying the steady flow energy equation to the different components of refrigeration cycle, you would get an expression which is a very neat expression in terms of enthalpies. And let me write down these expressions. That expression I would be writing down first in terms of QL and W. And you know that QL is the refrigerating effect. The specific refrigerating effect can be calculated as the enthalpy change across the evaporator, which is representing the lower temperature. So this would be H1 minus H4, or simply the delta H across the evaporator, delta H across the evaporator. Similarly, the work would be the compression work, and this happens across the compressor. So which is the enthalpy gain in the compressor, which is H2 minus H1. Okay. So once you can calculate the H2 and H1, okay, you can calculate the compressor work. If you can find H1 and H4, you can find the refrigerating effect, and you can get the coefficient of performance of a simple vapor compression cycle as a ratio of enthalpy change. Okay, enthalpy change across the evaporator upon enthalpy change across the compressor. So this is how we need to look at it. This is very interesting analysis, very important analysis for any budding engineers if you want to understand and practically analyze the practical plants. So to start with, we need to have a thorough understanding of what is known as the vapor compression refrigeration cycle. So in the next class, we would be discussing the modifications to this cycle. We would be discussing how, by looking at the cycle, the refrigeration cycle, especially the vapor compression refrigeration cycle, we can estimate how one can improve the performance of the practical machines. That is, we would be looking into the ways of improving the performance of vapor compression refrigeration cycle conceptually and then practically. So this is all for now. Thanks for being online. Have a good day. Bye for now.